May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Therese Fitzgerald. Therese practiced at the San Francisco Zen Center and Tassajara Zen Mountain Center from 1976 through 84, and that included 2 years of what she calls training with author and mentor Nancy Wilson Ross, who Zen Center took care of in Nancy's final decade or so. She was ordained by Richard Baker in Santa Fe as a Zen priest in 1986. She was with Thich Nhat Hahn, ordained by him as a dharmacharya in 1994, along with her husband, Arnie Kotler. She co-founded the community of mindful living, which helped build Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching base in the United States. And also she was very involved with, Arnie started Parallax Press, so Therese was part of Parallax Press while that was happening, and publishing Thich Nhat Hanh books. And then under the leadership of Maxine Kingston, she helped establish the Veterans Writing Group, which continues strong to this day. She and Arnie moved from the Bay Area to Hawaii a long time ago. She served for 6 years as a consultant and director of Ala Kukui Hana Retreat in Maui. And then up to about 10 years ago, for 20 years, she gave meditation and training mindfulness retreats throughout the United States, along with Arnie and Wendy Johnson in their community of mindful living, and Joan Halifax was involved. And she's participated in prison ministry and developed a Dharma mentoring program, and she's a hospice chaplain in Maui. This is part one. Next week, there'll be part two with her, and they were two distinct times when we talked. Anyway, she has a lovely voice, I'll say that, and I mentioned here that she and Elin, my prior wife, used to sing these rounds that were so beautiful, and Elin and I would get together with Arnie and Therese. Anyway, so when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you want. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause. And we'll be here to hit the bell to end the meditation and give Therese Fitzgerald a call.
Hello.
Hello, Therese. How are you?
Hello, hello, David. Well, this is out of area, and yeah, I thought I was far out here, but you're out even farther.
Yeah, we're both. Well, I'm sort of on the edge of the Pacific. You're right in the middle of it.
Yep. Oh, well, I want to say a really thank you for developing this forum. It's kind of amazing, It's one place where people who don't have that easy access to really hear from each other do have it through you. So, I mean, I've really, of course, I was attentive when you interviewed Arnie, but since you invited me, I've listened to many of the podcasts now and really appreciate it.
Oh, great! That's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Really, it's great. I, in some sense, I didn't, I'm knowing people. Maybe I've forgotten a lot, but I'm knowing people like I didn't even have occasion to when I lived with them for years. At one practice center or the other at Zen Center. So it's a great forum. I'm sure many people have told you it would make a great book, but it'd also be a lot of work.
Well, yeah. I think a book of profiles of people is something I have in mind. But we'll see. I think I have a lot of ideas like that, but and I have a lot of help with Cuke Archives, but I think I'd need more help to get more done.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, what are you up to there?
Oh, well, maybe in the broadest sense, I'm up to, trying to understand the meaning of and make peace with my life. I think it's appropriate at my age and, with awareness of what I do, as a hospice chaplain, it's very much on my mind, as it has been for a long time. Yeah. But, you get closer to the likelihood of, non-endless possibilities. You come more face-to-face with these questions, these existential questions.
Yeah. So you're being a hospice chaplain.
Yep, for almost 9 years now.
So how's that going?
Oh, I mean, fabulously. I really love the work, and it has allowed me access to people of all different backgrounds here, which, I'm very grateful for. I've wanted that from always, from the beginning of being here on the islands. And it's not easy. It's not easy to have access. There's so many different kinds of people. And but as a chaplain, I see all those different kinds of people, and I'm in homes and I'm in facilities and so on. Yeah, it's great. Great work.
How many do you have? What is this done through? I mean, do you have? Do you call them clients?
Oh yeah, it's done through it's done through a hospice company here. There are two companies on Maui, and I'm working with the one that's been going for maybe 35 years here.
And how do you? What sort of hospice chaplain are you? How do you identify yourself?
Well, I mean, I'm not a specifically Buddhist chaplain. I mean, I'm an interfaith chaplain. Yeah, including, agnostics and atheists, etc.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
which is another thing I really love. It's Yeah.
Well, that's my identity too.
Yeah. 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 It's really. I mean, sometimes people don't quite, they don't quite fathom it. But a lot of people aren't that familiar unless you've been, in a prison and seen chaplains there, or through the military, or sometimes through a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So chaplain is sometimes not even exactly understood by people.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. So, what's there to understand?
Well, that
I mean,
I am
you
there
say chaplain isn't
there.
understood. I don't have
Yeah.
any trouble. I mean, it doesn't seem like that complex. A chaplain is
but,
define what a chaplain is.
a chaplain is a person who is versed in enough, different spiritual, ways of spirituality, including, non-religious ones.
Yeah.
So that they can be present and support people on their very unique paths.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I think, it's not the most common thing in life. I've found that people, have a sense of the breadth of possibilities, along any lines. I mean, political, spiritual, religious, etc. So when you say you're really respectful and open and supportive of every kind of spiritual pathing, or even to take the word spiritual out, I mean, like homemaking, integrating, human pathing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a word I borrowed from Stephen Batchelor. I don't know. I haven't heard anybody else use that. Maybe it's used in Britain a lot, but I love
are you
word.
saying? Did you say pathing?
Yeah, right. Pathing.
Huh. All right.
Yeah, I like that word. Yep. Kind of active sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. Pathing would be the act of making a path.
Right, and it's in motion,
Right.
And that's what I find. It is kind of amazing, and sometimes right to the last moment. The last moment you see something in someone's eyes, or feel it, in their bodies, through their voices, if they're still using their voice, etc. You can feel a sense, like portals opening.
Yeah, I like the word pathing. I doubt if I'll use it. Well, it might come up. We'll see. But I like it because it's that's what the Buddhist path is. It's not something that's there. It's something that's evolving. And the Claude Dallenberg Ananda in a lecture at Zen Center, probably in about 72, said that the Buddhist path is the hunter's path. Marga is the hunter's path. That it is not a path that's laid out. It's one you keep finding out where it is, where to go. And it's not this, each person is different.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So you're living, where are you living in Hawaii?
On the island of Maui.
Oh, you live on Maui. I forgot.
Yeah.
Ah, and so now how'd you get there?
Yeah, really. It's, oh dear, because who knew? Even living in California, I don't think many of us thought very much about Hawaii. We knew from Diane Gray, Emmy Azeka. We knew about Hawaii from them. We knew about it from Elvis, but
Elvis.
lo and behold.
Oh yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
Elvis.
I remember. I remember. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was I think 1999. Someone who had just bought a huge property in North Kohala on Hawaii Island came to a retreat with Thich Nhat Hahn, and there was another person who, some people from North Kohala, which is a remote area of Hawaii Island, came to retreats with Thich Nhat Hahn, and that started, a series of discussions and visits to start what we called at the time Kohala Mountain Mindfulness Center. So it was a very interesting project.
Mm.
That's what moved us, in 1999 from the Bay Area to Hawaii Island.
99. Ah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, well, let's go further back. Where were you born?
I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Ah. Ha 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 ha.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you got a little south in you there. Even though there's
got
north.
A lot of south in me.
Yeah, even though there's north in the name. And when were you born?
52.
Oh,
yep.
Really?
I'm into my, what is it, sixth dozen.
What'd you say?
Sixth dozen of years.
Oh, that's funny. Right.
Well, that's big in the Chinese system, yeah. Those 12 years. Yeah. So I came to Zen Center. Yeah.
Well, wait. What's your like in terms of your way-seeking path? When did you first have some inkling that could have, like wondering what it's all about or being dissatisfied or something? Where did it start?
Yeah. I think when I left, Catholic high school, I went to Catholic grade school and high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was sure, like most young girls, I was sure I was going to be a Catholic nun.
Oh, no, really?
In touch with my, oh yeah. I stayed in touch with my first grade nun and into my 20s.
Oh.
And, really strong. I enjoyed my Catholic upbringing. I know that's a little rare, sadly, but I enjoyed it. It was a great community for me. It was creative. I enjoyed it. And yet, then I got, I knew that I was going to a high school that, the building was condemned. It was a defunct building, and actually the education was too. And a friend of mine ended up going over to a public high school, and she just raved about it. She said, "Oh, you've got to switch." And so that became really interesting to me. My parents were absolutely horrified until they, didn't have to pay those bills for the Catholic school, and they saw I really was getting a better education, much better.
Oh, that's interesting, because a lot of times, usually you go to private schools to get a better education.
Right. No. I'm telling you, sadly, I was taught Latin and health by a very senile nun, and we were always trying to get her confused and get her off the track of Latin and on to health, and then off health and on to Latin. I mean, I was becoming so creative in how to clown around in class. It was really something. My energy had to go somewhere, right?
Huh.
So it was bizarre. Oh yeah, it really sad. Sad in that it was sad for those teachers, but it was a waste of our time in terms of education. So I went over there, and oh boy, I was in an English class, and this teacher gave me a D. She said, come on, you can think. She started to, so she helped me learn how to think more critically and reflect and come up with my own thoughts. And at that, so I started to really question things, and I you probably know that Ned Spencer and Ernest Machen and I went to that same school together.
No, I didn't know that. I had no idea of that.
3 of us from that one high school in Charlotte, North Carolina, ended up at Zen Center.
Huh.
And, we were close friends, and we were really, deep friends in that we were exploring, real existential questions. And they were the ones who started reading about Buddhism before I did. They were reading Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. Both of them went to Zen Center before I did. Yeah, and so I think it was seeing the influence of their practice on them that moved me to decide to go myself during a time when I was really thrust into, catapulted into real existential questioning time. This is when my mother was dying. I was only age 22, and I had 3 younger siblings. So, that was a very intense time of questioning, wondering, what is this life about? That, such a dear, precious person is going through this terrible suffering and a life cut so terribly short. I mean, I'm almost 20 years older than she was when she died.
Mm.
Yeah. And, it was interesting. I mean, I carried in my backpack to Zen Center, when I traveled across the country from North Carolina, I carried in my backpack The Myth of Freedom, by Chogyam Trungpa. I had seen him in 72 in Boston, where I was working. So he actually, his voice, his authorial, his written word reached me more easily than my Beginner's Mind. It's taken me a long time to really resonate and feel one with Suzuki Roshi's words in that book. It was very bewildering for me for a long time.
Mm.
But Chogyam Trungpa, he really spoke to me. The Myth of Freedom, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. Yeah, those 2 books. I remember sitting in, these shower stalls in campgrounds where you put in money to turn on a heater, and I would be sitting in there reading those books that I carried in my backpack.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. I was 24 when I walked up the steps of Zen Center.
Hmm.
With a backpack.
So 24, you're born in 52, to be 76.
76. Mm-hmm. Yep, it was summer.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, what happened?
Yeah.
How was it? What was it like when you walked into Zen Center?
Oh, well. First of all, imagine this first time I crossed the Continental Divide, and I really thought I was, hitting moonscape. I mean, it didn't look like anything I'd ever lived near. I was very much northeast, southeast gal. I mean, that's what I knew, and so going west was really foreign. And I think this is funny. I arrived at San Francisco, and honestly, as I was walking up those steps, a friend of mine from Eastern Canada had figured out, how in the world, this is way before cell phones, and figured out that I was going to be there. So we ended up traipsing around. We took a bus over and camped in Tilden Park, and there I was in the dark, rolling around on eucalyptus nuts, and I thought, where am I? And we actually wandered the streets. This friend of mine,
Berkeley. You're talking about Berkeley there.
Yeah, I was in Berkeley, and hanging out on street corners. Person was really into begging on the streets, all that. I remember going into the Haight area, and boy, by the time I said sayonara to my dear friend, I was so glad to go up those stairs of Zen Center, and this time go in the door and be greeted by that beautiful entryway, looking out on the courtyard garden with the view of the Buddha Hall to the right, the tatami Buddha Hall. It was exactly what I needed. I needed the calm, the beauty, the order. I really needed that. Yeah, so I took to it like a fish to water.
Who'd you meet when you came in?
Well, I don't, I remember I stayed with Melanie. Melanie, God, am I forgetting her name?
Haller. Melanie, before she was Haller. God.
Right.
I can't remember.
Yeah, anyway, Melanie. Yeah, I stayed with her for a night or two, and then I think I shared a room with Laura Burgess for a brief time. Yeah, and then we only had a little time at that point. You could only stay in Zen Center for a short time, and it was great.
Wait a minute. What you mean is you could only live in the building for a short time.
Right.
When you first came. When you first came.
Exactly.
As a guest student.
Right. And so pretty soon thereafter, I was really lucky to rent a room. You know what? Jack Weller. Jack Weller had an apartment. I could use his kitchen a little bit. I must have used the bathroom, but I had just a little room off that to myself. So that was great, and to get to know Jack. And then I moved over to 191 Haight. Yeah, which was great. Yeah, I really loved living in that household. Really loved it.
Yeah. A lot of people lived there. Yeah,
it was so great to, be with a group of people focused on, sitting ourselves down in that zendo and being involved with Zen Center, when we were not, I was not able to be a resident there until, again, have some time before you could become a resident. And it was just such a great group of people. I remember especially Miriam Bobkoff. When I got to know her. Chris Fort. Her name was Engelhardt. Chris Engelhardt Fortin.
Right.
Yeah, and Frank
Kilmer?
Farrell.
Oh, Frank Farrell.
No, Frank. Yeah, Frank Farrell. And of course always Tom Kabarga.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and Tony, Darlene's husband, Tony.
Patchell.
Tony Patchell, right. So a great group of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what'd you do?
Oh, boy. Just like trying to find housing, I had to find work.
Mm-hmm.
And I really fumbled around with that. Good God, finding a job as, can you imagine? I am delivering flowers to people at Christmas time, Christmas Eve out on streets like Lombard. In a big van carrying flowers. That was so bizarre. I survived it, I remember doing something really bizarre, like it was called Portable Picnic. I was painting some room in a building that Zen Center owned, and I remember seeing a sign, call Portable Picnic, and so I did. And of course, I was scared to death the day I was supposed to meet this guy in a gold Volkswagen, at the train station. What is this? Or maybe it was the bus depot downtown. Oh, God. And so I did that. I walked around downtown with this basket full of, picnic lunches for the working people there. Just bizarre. And then ended up, doing a job. I remember with Bob Britton is his name, right?
Yeah.
I helped him so-called build that wall of the house where Hiroshi and his family lived. Things like that.
You mean the wall in front to the sidewalk?
Yeah.
Oh, that was a very lightly built wall. The at least the first one. It was on the theory to make a wall you couldn't climb, that it was too flimsy to climb. Well, it was made out of material that was very light, very thin boards.
Yeah. Oh. It was. I was working hard. Can't remember who the work leader was. It was. I don't know if it was Bruce Fortin or someone else's name. I can't remember. I remember them saying to me, though, did you not, kind of clean up from yesterday? And I remember saying, oh, well, what the heck? I'm just going to get dirty again. And then, they quoted me Dogen, which I can't remember, but I remember the sense of it.
Yeah. Well, they could have said cleanliness is next to godliness.
Yeah. And then I got settled into a job at the Tassajara Bread Bakery. Remember when it first opened? And it was just a few of us in the front there. Emmy Ozeka was one of them. Oh, Emmy Ozeka, who, and the head of the front was a woman's name I forget, but she eventually, I think, married Emmy's first husband. Maybe I'm wrong. God, you get these things kind of confused after a while. But it was interesting to, work in an environment with people you're also sitting in the zendo with, making meals and cleaning up and everything else back in the center.
Mm.
So, practice-related workplaces. And I really loved the whole, bakery crew, Jim Phelan and Peter Overton and Ken Sawyer. Ken was a little bit later. Karen Yording. Yeah, I learned a lot from her.
Yeah. So,
it was.
Did you get down to Tassajara?
Yeah, I was, at Zen Center for about a year and a half, and then in, the fall of '77, I went to Tassajara and stayed for 4 practice periods and 1 summer. Yeah, I really loved that.
Do you remember anything about it? Anything in particular?
Well, I mean, I just that's how I came to love the land of California. I mean, and I would always go out, on hikes on 4 and 9 days. The days we were off the usual schedule, and it was a wonderful group of people there with me, including Philip Whalen, who I would come upon sitting in that very cool stream, with a board across the stream with all his books on it, sitting there with his wonderful, was it a Chinese hat, a woven hat?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he's such a character, such a delightful, strong force, really. David Schneider was with me, good part of the time. Just wonderful people. Miriam, I loved being with Miriam. I roomed with her, and she had to be near the stream. So, we had housing by the stream, and we walked it a lot, walked the hills. Yeah, I mean, there was one time I went out. Now, his name, I think it was David, blonde, tall, very lean. We went out for a long hike. He got very sick, and I just had to kind of wait for him to recover so that he could finally get up and walk back with me. And we were walking back, as the sun was going down. And I remember a rattler, hearing a rattler on the road. Somehow we were on the road part of the way. And I just ran as fast as I could. So it was, I remember a lot of, encounters with nature. I remember hearing, chanting in the stream, just endless chanting. Yeah.
That's neat.
I worked in the kitchen. A lot, and I was on general labor longer than most people. I don't know how I deserve that, but I was. I was there. I was one of the laborettes. Let me think. Married Lucy Calhoun. Come on.
Who? Clay? Are you talking about Clay?
Yeah, Clay Calhoun. Yeah, I was one of the laborettes with Clay. We were all women on his team.
Oh.
And that was oh, God. He was great. I've never forgotten. Every time I use a shovel and clean and dry my shovel, I think of Clay. Yeah.
So?
But, and I remember the Chusseaus, and each of them was, very individual. And I learned a lot from each, especially Catherine Thanos and Linda Ruth Cutts. Yeah. I really, really appreciated their guidance and example. Yeah.
So, well, where'd it go from there?
Well, you might say I cut my time short. I mean, I was there, only 2 years, but I was called away, and then even farther away. I mean, I ended up going to, I was one of what were called Zen kids, with Nancy Wilson Ross. I lived with her for a year.
So,
and then lived with her another year. Yeah.
You were with Nancy Wilson Ross for 2 years?
Yeah, I lived with her 1 year, and then I went back, I think it was 83 or 4. I lived with her another year.
Wow. What was that like?
Yeah. It was intense. It was very, very intense, especially the first year, because, well, that was very new, and I was so fully engaged. I mean, I would go from 8 in the morning until 9 at night with little breaks. But the first year, Nancy was quite energetic still, Yeah, and, a lot of irons in the fire. And I was doing everything. I was her cook, house cleaner, valet, secretary, confidant. That's how it was. You were, chauffeur. Imagine me, a Carolina girl, learning how to drive this Grand Dame in, into Manhattan and then back out to Long Island. It was really kept me on my toes.
Well, what do you think about Zen Center having a program that Richard Baker set up to send people to the East Coast to take care of Nancy Wilson Ross, who was a writer on Buddhism. She wrote some popular books, sort of introducing Buddhism to the West in her own way, and of course she was very tied into East Coast high society. And a lot of very wealthy people. But there's so many people from the Zen Center who went and stayed with her there. It sounds like you enjoyed it.
Yes, I did. I mean, and I heard else real well, and I heard his podcast about, and you talked with him a lot about Nancy, and of course it's written up in Shoes Outside the Door, because it is an interesting and a very interesting kind of cross-pollination. I mean, we were learning from her, but she was also learning from us, and we had contact with so many interesting, dynamic characters, individuals, and learning from them. I mean, I became really fond of some of the people I met through her. I mean, deeply fond. And of course, I was very, very fond of Nancy. She was like a cultural mother for me. And she was, like all our mentors, we learn how not to be too, and I did. I learned how not to be from her in certain ways. And, oh yeah, I mean,
like tell me, come on, give me some specifics.
How not to be? Well,
you could do how to be and how not to be.
Yeah, how to be. Well, Nancy really I mean, I have always had this in me, but I learned from Nancy how to take an interest in people the way Nancy, took an interest in people. And that was wonderful and rich for me, really, really important. And I did feel taken, I mean, she did take a deep interest in me. Sometimes and this is how I learned, not to be, is the way she, she had certain prejudices toward this and against that. And
do you have any specifics there?
Well, okay, but this is, how to be and how not to be. She used to say something like, God, you Zen kids, you Zen people, you just never read. You always have to be outdoors and going full tilt outdoors, and that kind of thing. Well, she would go swimming every morning, in the Adirondack lake that she lived on with us. Where I lived with her, during summer months. And she would go out there. That was beautiful to see, a woman in her 80s, going in this cold water and swimming. She had, so it was interesting. She did that, but then she would, when, say, if she got impatient or she just, wanted to see some change or whatever. I mean, she would say things like that. But then actually, she was also great at inspiring others. I felt very strongly inspired by her to read a lot of all kinds of things I'd never been exposed to before.
Like what?
So, I like Jungian psychology, like certain periods, in French culture that were, very dynamic, etc. She would say, read this, and hand it to me. She had a house full of magnificent, her library was fantastic. And so she was very good at encouraging that. So you see, she actually sometimes she lived more, in a more well-rounded way than she would speak at times. She would, and she was, it was interesting. I think she just sometimes did not have, she lost patience, or she just would, she would go off and very intense. I mean, I can tell you this for sure. One day she was so upset, I can't remember what it was. She was so upset with me. And I remember very specifically, we were in this threshold between the kitchen and her beautiful living room, magnificent art of every kind. And she was shaking me. And I thought, this is how I do not want to be. She was shaking me with some big opinion that I didn't really respect. But, she was doing that.
What did you not respect?
Her opinion that was causing her to shake me, like she could shake something out of me, whatever it was. See, I can't even remember what she was trying to shake me about. Well, but I mean, we all learn these things, don't we, from teachers, parents, mentors, sometimes even friends. We're learning, and even if someone has something very important for us to learn, even, and at this, as I recall, it wasn't something, like I say, that I respected. Still, skillful means. You got to find a way for that person to learn it from you. And that was not a way to teach me, and it wasn't something I wanted to learn, which I can't remember. That's kind of funny. Because that's very strong. It was the only time she shook me like that. Yep.
Now, sometimes there'd be more than one person with her. Were you the only one there when you...
Well, but you always had, we always had kind of transmission from the person, from the previous assistant. So I was trained by Lynn Hesselbart, and then I trained, was it Ann Overton, and also, because I was there a number of times. Also, I really love Bob Dylan. I think he has died.
Oh, Robert Lytle.
Yes, thank you. Robert Lytle and
he
his
did
wife.
not like being there.
No, he did not.
No,
it did not work at all. It was really painful to observe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That, I think those are except for visits by people, I think those were the only people. There was a brief time, I was thinking of this, Lee Klinger, Lesser, she came because her family's on Long Island, and there was a time when she was, I think during my second year with Nancy, she would come and spend time, and it was interesting. She came, and I was hoping, and Nancy had, decreed that she was going to help with this big kind of paper filing project. And Nancy kept clippings on everything she might possibly write about, clippings from the Times and everything. And that was all filed away in a basement room. And so I thought, great, Lee's going to come and help do some of that. But Lee spent all the time with Nancy, of course, and that's what Nancy needed. She needed a lot of time with people. She had a lot to share. I mean, I actually recorded her sitting around the fires, the different fireplaces and living rooms we would live in together, because she lived in, a couple of residences, and I made a lot of recordings of her.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did. Talking about the Bauhaus during.
What did you do with
Germany.
them?
I have them, and I haven't done anything with them.
Well, why don't you digitize them?
Yet. What did you say? Why don't I digitize them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, because it'd be interesting to listen to them now and to read what she was saying.
Yeah. Well, if you could digitize them, there'll be a studio there that'll do it for you. Be easy to do. And then I'd put them on Cuke.com. And
yeah, I'd have to. Well, thanks for the reminder and the interest. I know they're precious. I know that.
Well,
yeah.
Also, what I'm doing now, I just started this year, is transcribing the interviews with artificial intelligence. I'm not. I only have put one of them online, and it's not even. It's not really good enough yet. But the artificial intelligence will be doing a better and better job. But I transcribe them because I can go through them that way more easily. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Katrinka's going to do some yoga in the adjoining room. So she closed the door here. Anyway, something like that you shouldn't put off.
Right. Yep.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, what happened after Nancy?
Well, the implosion of San Francisco Zen Center, and that was part of why I went to be with her because it was so upsetting to her. It was so devastating for her that she actually came down with an illness, endocarditis. What is that? Inflammation of the heart valve or something, some heart condition. And I really thought she was going to die. I mean, she was.
What upset her? What upset her?
Oh, the implosion of 1983.
Well, what was that?
With Baker Roshi. Yeah, well, it was the coming to the head of the sense of betrayal and disharmony between the Sangha and Baker Roshi and all the changes that proceeded from that, and Nancy felt that she felt it, in a very deep personal way.
Well, she felt it before people at Zen Center did. She warned him.
Yeah.
Did you know about that?
Yeah, but tell me how you know about it and what you know.
Oh, I can't remember. I just know that she knew.
Oh yeah. She's a woman of the world, and yeah, she was a woman of the world, and she knew him, and she heard from so many different people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right, she knew. So, and she was, very much up in age. She only lived for less than 3 years after that. Yeah, so, that's when I, went to be with her. And that was, I think I came back in 84, or maybe it was 85. Yeah, it was 85. And I remember it was, Arnie came from New Jersey, met me at Nancy's with the car he bought, and we drove across country. And
who's Arnie?
Arnie Kotler is my husband.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. When did that happen?
Well, we uncoupled in 82, and we were part of the last dharmacharya with Baker Roshi in the city center.
So you had a boyfriend.
Right. Yeah, and he was.
When did that start?
Like I say, 82.
Oh, 82.
And,
okay.
when we were on the dharmacharya together, I was a Baker Roshi's
What's the dharmacharya?
Well, what does that literally mean? It's the abbot's team. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were the last, and in the city center, and that was up close and intense, and I frankly never would have imagined Arnie and me getting together, but we did, and like I say, he picked me up from Nancy's, and a dear Dharma friend of mine, who I knew through my, beginning involvement with Thich Nhat Hahn and his Sangha, actually was the last person who I brought in to take care of Nancy.
Who's that?
Yeah. Her name is Carol Melkonian. She was at, like I say, I knew her. She was involved with Thich Nhat Hahn early on. And Arnie had met her during retreats with Thich Nhat Hahn before I did. She happened to be in Florida, where Nancy and I were, and I saw her, and I proposed, that she come and help take care of Nancy, and she did. She was the one. She was the last one I trained. Yep.
Now I want to ask something.
Nancy died.
What was the first? What year was the first time you went to be with Nancy?
Oh gosh, it was when I remember Diane and Jordan married, and and there was a party at Green's, and then I went to be with Nancy. So I think that was 80, yeah. And then the next time was 83, 84, 83. I think it was 84. Yeah.
84. So the first time you went there, Richard Baker was still Abbott. And the second time you went there was after he had left.
Yes.
Well, now you said you were part of his entourage, or not entourage. You were part of his staff. You were part of his staff.
Right. Right.
And how many people were on his staff? You said Docho Rio.
There was Darlene. Yeah, Darlene and Miriam and Arnie were the office staff, and I was the Anja in the city center.
You all were all specifically his staff?
Yeah, right. He had 3 office staff.
Just for him, not for Zen Center?
Well, I mean, it was through Zen Center.
I know it was through Zen Center.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like they weren't working in the office for Zen Center stuff. They were just.
No, I think as I recall, it was Arnie, but I think he was doing the work of what ended up being 3 people's staff rather than just one. It was increased. I think I've got that right. Increased, and he had 3 office staff in the city center, and me as Anja.
Huh.
And then I think he also. I remember the Anja there was a different Anja at Tassajara, of course, and I think at Green Gulch.
Yeah, the Anja was like Tassajara would be the cabin cleaner, making tea for him and stuff like that. So your Anja in the city, you had things you did in his apartment?
Yeah, and, I was very involved with Elizabeth, which I really enjoyed.
Who's Elizabeth?
With, Renee and his second daughter.
Uh-huh. And Renee, and who's Renee?
Yeah. Renee and his wife, Virginia. Renee, close friend of Baker Roshi and Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And, I did household things. I took care of, I'll never forget, I was trained by Miriam. She had been the Anja before. She was so funny. When we lay out his voluminous robes, on a king-size bed, and she would teach me how to fold them very carefully, the Japanese style, of course. And they were massive, and I have used those methods on so many things, along with my father's teachings about how to fold up a huge tent. But,
neat.
It's great. Oh, yeah.
Neat.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. These practical things. And so, I was involved with, the Anja, with the ceremonial things. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So now, wait, I want to. So in 82, you were on the Docho Rio. So what about 83?
Yeah. Well, let's see. I stayed on the Doce Rio for a little time. After Baker Roshi was no longer the abbot. He was still in the city.
But that was 83.
Oh, yeah. That was 83, right. And then I was Shika in the city center. I was the guest mistress, and, that was the time when we were, we had that beautiful building on Page. Remember, I don't know what it is now.
The Hodge House.
But it's the Hodge House. It was next to that park.
Yeah.
And we were creating a guest house. I mean, not just a guest house for Zen Center visitors, but an inn. That was different.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. Very much.
Yeah, well, that continued. Did Zen Center eventually sell that?
I can't remember. I know there was a time when it was going to be a hospice. It was the hospice.
It was a hospice.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It went from the Zen Center guest house to being the hospice. I can't. I don't know. They might have. So they got into divesting so much after he left.
Yeah.
He was expansive, and they were contractive.
Yeah. So I was. Yeah. I went from being Anja to being Shika.
Yeah.
Guest mistress. I don't know what the English is for Shika. Guest manager, something like that.
Well, what do you remember about? Is there anything specific about that time when there was sort of an uprising against his method of his method of being abbot?
Right. Well, David. Yeah, that's putting it real mildly. I think the hardest thing for me was how polarized it all became, and in fact how it was for me before the craze or the collapse or the implosion. Think of it many ways like that, but. In that, you see, I was getting to know him, and in part through Nancy and all the contact with the other Zen kids coming to visit. I know that is a kind of, Zen kids was just a playful way we referred to ourselves, and she referred to us. But anyway, I was getting to know Baker Roshi and getting to know his great imperfections, like anybody you get to know, but there were very questionable aspects of his behavior that I would bring up with people, and during, before people develop very negative attitudes toward him, it was hard to get anybody to acknowledge, oh yeah, that's hard to reconcile, or yeah, that's hard to live with.
Like what? Like what?
Oh, like the huge discrepancy between how he lived and how we hard-working fellow human beings were living.
Uh-huh.
That was hard.
Uh-huh.
It was too extreme. Yeah, it was too extreme.
Yeah,
and,
it was.
It was also, there were things that were too extreme about, what he said and what he did. and so that too, and I saw these things, and I would talk with him about it. I would talk with.
Oh, really? Good for you. Tell me about talking with him about it.
Well, I did talk with him. And there were times when I was in meetings, and he would say something about someone, and I'd stand up for that person, given my experience with that person. And then, as his anja, I'm following him up the stairs, and he's saying, "Why did you da da da?" And so I did try to speak with him, and I'm actually glad that I had that time. I think it helped me not be so polarized at all about him. I mean, I was. And of course, I got a front row seat, of his suffering during that time. I saw him broken, and people knew that. That's not a secret. I remember breaking down, just sobbing at a meeting. I remember Mayumi was sitting next to me. It was, I think, a meeting at Green Gulch, but sobbing, that this man had devastated so many people, yes, and this man is really hurting. But it's never easy to sort all that out.
Mm-hmm. Well,
it's never easy to sort all that out.
Well, was Arnie devastated?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, Arnie was devastated in his own way, sure. And given the kind of intimacy we had with him, and I always refer to him as Baker Roshi. I didn't know him as Dick, and I never called him Richard. So for me, Baker Roshi or Roshi, that also means, the man I knew, the very imperfect man I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we saw both sides.
Mm-hmm.
So up front,
mm-hmm.
to be with him during his total, collapse.
Now Arnie and I remember, Arnie stayed with him.
Right, Arnie Arnie and I, yes, we did. We moved over to the center. Oh, shoot!
Over in Potrero Hill when he got that place.
Yeah, we went. Yep, I remember. My great comfort was kind of sweeping, or maybe it was raking. In the mornings, with the roaring traffic, of the highway there. Gosh, but that was another great piece of real estate, though, wasn't it? We both moved there, and Isan Dorsey was there.
I broke into that building.
You broke? What do you mean, David?
Yeah. I was temporary director of Green Gulch for half a year, because Green Gulch sort of fell apart, and I had, I was living there. Liz had kicked me out of Bolinas, and which she thought would be temporary. It was the second time, and that's when Elin and I got together when I was there. But there was an Avedisian painting, a big one, at Green Gulch. And I said, Edward Avedisian did not like Zen Center. He was a friend of Richard Baker. And well, we should give this to Richard. And it's, people went, all right. So I had it put into, me and someone else went over there, put it in, a big truck that like a shopping truck with the back, you pull down. And I drove it over there, and there was nobody there. There was nobody there. I hadn't told him I was coming. I assumed D-Son would be there.
Oh, my God.
So I remember looking at it, and the door was locked and everything, and I said, you can break in, whoever I was with, I said, you can break into almost any building. And I climbed up on the I got to the second floor window and opened it and went in and opened the door from below. And the person I was with and I found a nice place and put the painting there. And it was giant. And then I went back to Green Gulch. And nobody ever said anything. I was waiting for a response, I was waiting for something, but nobody ever said anything. And then I saw Isan. I said, I don't know. I probably just called him Tommy. I said, hey, Tommy, did you notice that there was a large Edward Avedisian pen? He said, oh, yeah. I was trying to get some thanks or credit or something. Oh, yeah.
I didn't know about that. I was probably already gone. I didn't stay there long. I didn't stay, and that wasn't open long. So.
Yeah, what happened to it? How come it?
Well, I just, so I remember Paul Rosenblum and, was it John Nelson? Yeah, John. I remember John really, trying to kind of keep it together, and a lot of, need for funding and so on, and just didn't continue. I mean, Arnie was actually living there while I was with Nancy. So, he was involved longer as a resident. But, I do remember when I was there, when I was residing there, I remember there was a day, a day-long fishing, and I remember I had my back to, the stairs where Baker Roshi would enter from, and, I was facing the wall, and there was one person next to me, and I can't remember his name, long-haired man, and we were the only two people there in this big sitting room, and Baker Roshi went back up the stairs. So it was, it was that kind of time.
Well, so what happened to you and Arnie? What happened next?
So then we came back to California, and I went to UC
Came
Berkeley.
back to California. He picked you up at Nancy's, right? All right.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
And we lived in Berkeley. So we started living in Berkeley.
And Elin and I would come visit you.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? And we visited you in Japan.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I remember the New Year's party. Wild.
You mean the New Year's party at the temple next door, Sogenji?
Right. Yes.
Oh, far out. Huh.
Yeah.
You know what I remember about you and Elin is you all would sing rounds together, and it was really beautiful.
I so glad to hear that. Yes,
Oh,
what a
God, you
gift.
all were good.
Oh.
You know, it was beautiful.
Well, she was a magnificent choir master, you know. She
Yeah.
really was. She was a great teacher. And I need to tell her, I have used those songs, hymns too, so much with people as a chaplain. It's just the best.
Oh, well,
yeah,
tell her, yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really, really beautiful. You know, because yes, I love to chant, but also to sing and to sing hymns. You know, she taught me Latin hymns. oh,
Wow.
Elin.
And so you and
Yeah.
Arnie were over there in Berkeley, and
That's right. 1985, he started Parallax Press, you know, on his credit cards. In 1985. Yep.
And
as I was going to school.
What were you doing in school?
I was studying English literature, of course, after being with Nancy.
Oh.
She had really turned me on to English literature, and I'm so glad I studied. I really do. Of course, I love French literature, Russian literature, German literature, but I wasn't going to study those languages. I mean, I did study French at Berkeley too, but I'm really glad I just delved into English literature. It was great. I was there for 4 years. I went to college for 5.5 years.
Oh my God! Oh, you came to Zen Center without going to college first?
Right. I had gone, for a year and a half to University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I loved it there too. Although, I mean, I love studying, but I really felt very alienated from the, community of people, and I really wanted to leave, and I did, even though I loved my studies, Russian literature in particular, and French, learning French. But I was so alienated. It's such a big fraternity, sorority school, big sports, all that. I had to be in a women's dorm with a den mother for the first year and so on. It was just really not where I could flourish. And, I mean, it was a dark period to leave the known. My father said it. How do you go from the, beautiful things opened up for me. I ended up going to work with disturbed children referred by the courts in Boston to live in a residential center, a Catholic residential center. And I moved to Boston, which was fabulous.
Yeah.
It was,
Well, oh my God.
That was before I went to Zen Center. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so you and Arnie are in Berkeley.
That was yeah.
Oh, yeah. You and Arnie are in Berkeley.
He's yeah.
But were you, he got very involved with Thich Nhat Hahn. Did you get involved with Thich Nhat Hahn?
Well, remember when Thich Nhat Hahn came to Tassajara? Well, he actually came to Zen Center too.
Sure, he came to Green Gulch.
I greeted him.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yep, that whole walking meditation video was made during the time that practice session at Green Gulch. That's an interesting record of his visit there, because it's everybody who attended is there, as he's giving his very, signature practice walking meditation instructions with Reb and all the residents at Green Gulch at the time. That was 83. And then, gave the practice session at Tassajara. So, I mean, I actually greeted him. It was so interesting. I greeted Thich Nhat Hanh when he came to Baker Roshi's house. They came together, and he came in. He didn't take his big, heavy clogs off, Thich Nhat Hanh. And I was there while Baker Roshi was showing him this and that, paintings or whatever, in the downstairs area. And I remember Thich Nhat Hanh just walking very deliberately and very meditatively. And he would didn't really engage in conversation. And then, you know, I was up on the second floor at some point, and they were saying goodbye. And Thich Nhat Hanh said to me, "Aren't you coming?" And of course, Baker Roshi said, "Oh, no, she has things to do here." And Arnie was assigned, as part of the dharmacharya, you know, Arnie was assigned to attend to Thich Nhat Hanh. And so, you know, it was hard to, I think I heard John talk about this too, it was hard to get in to the conference at Tassajara. But when I told Roshi, I'll do the baking, I'll do the bread baking at night, you know, I was allowed to go. So I would be kneading the bread at night and attending the conference during the day. Nothing like youth, right, David? You could do that and swim in that great pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I really learned how to swim relaxedly, was in the Tassajara pool.
Great pool, you're right. Yeah.
Oh, man, I loved it. It wasn't so great when I went back there, though. I think I went in 2006, and it was so full of, I can't remember what it was. It was...
Oh, well, it just hadn't been cleaned, but it gets algae if it's not clean.
There's a lot of algae, yeah.
Well, they just, you know, that was a temporary thing. That somebody went, hey, there's too much algae, and they clean it up, you know.
I don't remember ever having algae in the pool, but
because that means they're running hot water into it. If you run hot water into it, you got to clean it a lot more, because the hot water has blue-green algae.
I didn't know that. Maybe it was never warmed up when I was there, but I learned how to let my breath out. I used to just hold my breath and then come up and have to exhale and inhale at the same time. It was, I really swam a lot at Tassajara. I swam a lot. I swam during my afternoon breaks. I swam at night before I went to bed.
Oh, that's great.
I love that pool. Yeah.
That's great.
I really love that pool.
Yeah. I think I'd do that now. I'm much more into swimming than I've ever been. Now you and Arnie continued with Thich Nhat Hanh. How long did that go on?
Well, see, and I went to Plum Village with Arnie in '84. I remember I took some time off from Nancy. Somebody else probably came and was with her in the Adirondacks while Arnie and I went to Europe. And we went to Plum Village. We stayed there for a good number of days. And I enjoyed him. I enjoyed Thich Nhat Hanh, you know, at Tassajara very much. I appreciated his teachings, his presence, and I really enjoyed and felt connected in a different way by going to Plum Village, you know, because it was connecting with the Vietnamese people and understanding, you know, that, boy, they had forged their practice through two wars. You know, war with the French, war with the Americans, and that really moved me.
Wait! So, they had a war with the Chinese after that.
Right, there's that too.
That was a serious war.
Those
were. They had nothing but war from like World War. You know, there was World War II, and then the French came in and
Right. Yep.
told the Japanese to keep their guns to stop the Vietnamese from getting their independence.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was, that 84, and then Arnie met with people. I wasn't with him when he went to, and Carol Melkonian was, when Thich Nhat Hanh met with a few people and popped the question, what do you think about starting a press? And Arnie really took off with that idea, and that was 85, and he started working on the book that became Being Peace.
Yeah, but he had published a number of books. As I recall, a number of books had been published by Paralab Press before Being Peace.
No.
No?
No. Paralab. I mean, there were books published by other publishers by Thich Nhat Hanh, published by other publishers, like The Miracle of Mindfulness and
I didn't. All right, I was misinformed.
Yeah.
The first book of Thich Nhat Hanh's I was aware of was Lotus in a Sea of Fire.
Right.
Which Dr. Winter.
Yeah.
Do you remember Dr. Winter?
Yes, very well.
Tassajara's free doctor for a long time.
That's right.
Dr. Winter, Bill had a shelf of those books, and he gave them out free to people, and that was in the 60s, as I recall.
Right, exactly. Absolutely.
Thich Nhat Hanh came to Tassajara our first year, 1967, with Jim Forrest, who was head of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, and he was not
That's right.
He was not famous then, and he was sort of in hiding
not
a
at
little
all.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how'd it go with Thich Nhat Hanh? How many years were you involved with him, and how'd that go?
Yeah, from 84 to 99, and it was pretty intense, right? I mean, right, at the beginning for Arnie those years. I was, getting my degree at Cal, and in 88 when I emerged from, when I emerged, then I began to be very involved full time. I mean, before that, there is that ordination, with Baker Roshi in '86 with Miriam, and it was interesting. I was integrating both practices I was learning with Thich Nhat Hanh and what I had been learning with Baker Roshi and Zen Center, Tassajara. So, wasn't sure which way I was going to go. And, when I ordained with Baker Roshi, and Miriam was ordained at the same time, that was 86, and things were up in the air all around. I mean, up in the air in my life, but also in his. And
who's his? Which him?
Richard Baker Roshi. Yeah.
Yeah.
Baker Roshi. He. So I remember coming back from ordination, and I had a shaved head. I was riding my bike, to get to classes, and it was the 80s. Berkeley was not the campus of the 60s, and people really gave me a hard time having a shaved head. it was a kind of lonely time. I was paying off what I had to put out, to buy those lacquer bowls and so on. I mean, it was not gifted to me. I was getting loans for everything I needed to do at that time. It was hard, coming out of the stipend-only situation at Zen Center and having to pay my way through college, too. My father said, "No, you dropped out. That's the end of it." So I'm working two jobs. I worked for Professor Cahill, which was wonderful, learning all about Chinese art. And I started working for Buddhist Peace Fellowship.
Oh.
So, that was an interesting, I was director at Buddhist Peace Fellowship for a couple of years. And it was,
is that right?
I mean, the first, it was the first tour that Thich Nhat Hahn did in the United States as a Buddhist teacher was through the Buddhist Peace Fellowship, and that was, and Arnie was also working through the Buddhist Peace Fellowship. He was doing the newsletter, and we were really, in a sense, hustling to express our bodhicitta and to put food on the table. Yeah.
And so you were ordained by Baker Roshi, and then you were still, but you were studying with Thich Nhat Hahn too at that time. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. I remember him being very appreciative, of my ordination.
Now, wait a minute. We're talking about two men. You've got to say who the him is.
Thich Nhat Hahn was very appreciative. He was very fond of Baker Roshi, and he saw Roshi's suffering. He saw his weakness. He saw his vulnerability. And he tried to be an elder brother in the Dharma with him.
Yeah, he tried to get me when he came to Green Gulch. He told me I could get Richard Baker back there. He said,
wow.
Yeah, he wanted me to focus on getting Baker back to Zen Center. And
David, I never knew that. That's astounding.
I told him I think I'll just smile instead. Because that was he was talking about before. He'd been talking about, when you have a problem, just deal with it by smiling. I don't think he appreciated that.
I do. I really do.
I just thought, this guy had no idea. This guy had no idea how impossible that would be right now. And then he said he wasn't going to come anymore to Zen Center. It was just he thought, I don't know. He said he wouldn't come back anymore. He might have been back.
He did tell you that.
Huh?
He did tell you that he wouldn't come back, that he wasn't
going to come. He didn't tell me.
Again.
He told the staff we were meeting with him.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, that he didn't feel that without Dick there, he didn't feel that it was working anymore or something. I don't know. I don't know exactly why. I can't remember, but
It's interesting. I didn't know. I didn't know there was that. I mean.
Yeah.
Boy.
Interesting. All right. So, did you have? So you all continued with Thich Nhat Hahn in some way? I mean, Arnie was trying to find a center for him and stuff. What was so?
Oh, we were so full on. It was so full on. What I described about being Nancy's assistant was like, 1/20th of our days with Thich Nhat Hahn. In fact, I've been kind of recording some of the letters, especially during a particular time. I was at Plum Village, and I was writing Arnie a lot. I wrote letters back. He wasn't there with me. I was there for a month or something, and I have a lot of letters from that time. And boy, when I I feel exhausted when I finish one of these letters, talking about, well, how about this, and check on that, and let's make sure this, and we can do that, and so asked this, and it was just so incredibly demanding. Yeah, 85. So we started organizing, American tours every other year with Thich Nhat Hahn that grew bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, we went from, really small gatherings in 85, and then 87, up to 100. And then it got into a couple of hundred. And, by 99, there were 2,500 people at a day of mindfulness at Spirit Rock. There were 1,000 plus at a 5-day retreat at Omega Institute, and so on. And then I was also really involved with helping develop the Plum Village, summer session, which is, it's like Tassajara guest season, except the guests are completely involved as students. That's how, and people from all over the world, including a lot of Vietnamese people from all over the world, and the cultures were celebrated. We had festivals of different sorts to celebrate the cultures of the people who were attending the practice period, of a month long. Or usually it was only a week at a time. But so, and also developing tours in Europe, developing, Arnie and I, from like 88 until 99, we traveled 8 months of the year. It wasn't 8 months steady, and we were coming back, and we'd come back from these tours having traveled. Sometimes I had a stack of manuscripts, that were like 5 feet high. That's when you could travel like that on the airlines. And internationally, sometimes that leaning Tower of Pisa would fall over as we're running, to catch a whatever.
Wait a minute. What sort of manuscripts?
Oh, for example, when we traveled in 95, we traveled all through Asia. We spent weeks in Taiwan, China, Japan, and Korea. And during that time, Arnie was working on Living Buddha, Living Christ. And we had manuscripts stacked up. He was probably working on a couple of books. He would work on those books.
A couple of books don't stack 5 feet high.
Well, manuscripts, papers, computer. Honestly, I know I had things that were. We had papers, books. Computer. We had all that stuff. We were a traveling office. It was so intense. Yeah, it was so intense, and wonderfully fruitful a lot of the time. Very exciting. We were involved with Thich Nhat Hahn when he was so creative, interested in developing practice for families, with children, artists, environmentalists, veterans. It was really rich.
Mm-hmm. So how did it evolve?
And we were also looking for, a home, a practice home, which was very difficult. I mean, we looked a lot in California. We looked in Virginia.
Now, you're talking about a home for Thich Nhat Hanh, like a practice center.
Yeah. We worked, and I remember dear John Nelson, he helped us look for places out in Virginia. We looked at the Rudolf Nureyev place, just, not a far drive from the D.C. airport, et cetera. We were really involved with that, and just cranking out the books, with Parallax Press and books by other authors too. And this great project that went on to have a life of its own, having been started by Thich Nhat Hanh. That was the, veterans gatherings, and it became, a veterans writing group thanks to Maxine on Kingston's leadership, which started with Thich Nhat Hanh gathering the veterans we were at Casa de Maria, in Santa Barbara, and then we went, and also at Omega. We would have gatherings, on both coasts every time he came, and Maxine joined us, and Dina Metzger too. These two writers, but Maxine really committed herself, and that group is still meeting every season. The Veterans Writing Group. Yeah, and Arnie published one of their books, when he started the second press.
Koa, yeah.
Yeah, he published Veterans of War, Veterans of Peace, and those are writings by people who have attended that Veterans Writing Group. And the book was, very much edited by Maxine. She tells the story of this in her book, the fifth book of Peace, Maxine. Yeah, really, so the fruition has been rich. Yeah, and, that continued on. I mean, what is it? It was from 84 to 99, so good 15 years.
Did she live in the Oakland Hills?
Yeah, and that fifth book of Peace, the first manuscript went up in flames.
I remember that. That's why I asked it. So she did rewrite it.
Yes.
She did rewrite it.
Oh, yeah.
She had no copy.
That's right.
God.
Pardon me? Yeah. I know. No kidding. Wow.
Wow. I wouldn't do that.
Oh.
I have copies everywhere. I use 2 clouds, actually, even more than that, and hard drives. And, I'm just totally terrified I'm not doing enough. All right. So anyway, you're doing all that. Then how did that evolve?
Yeah. Oh, well, roughly. Let me just say that it evolved very roughly, and I mean, devastating. Absolutely devastating.
Come on. You have to say what?
Well, I mean, just a total rupture on all levels.
What?
In 99.
That doesn't describe anything. I don't want to hear what happened. For all I know, a bomb dropped. You gotta give some details.
Yeah, figuratively speaking, it did.
Yeah. Well, let's hear what happened.
And this. Yeah, I do want to be a little politic here because it's also just so it makes me so vulnerable to speak the truth, to speak my truth. I mean, what unfolded and what was reported publicly, does not really coincide with my experience. And, Arnie has written about this in The Inquiring Mind, and actually the article is online. He very bravely wrote about this on a deep level. I mean, wrote about what it was for him, which was huge. I mean, you know, in other words, I had my own experience, yes, but also I was experiencing what he experienced with having started this press by himself, like I say, putting so many of the expenses for years on his own personal credit cards, you know, and then making the decision, you know, to stop with the sole proprietorship. I think that's the legal term, you know, and you know, in 1990 we created the Buddhist Church organization, the Community of Mindful Living, and eventually moved Parallax Press into that. And you know, for years, you know, there were signs of what was to come. There were signs, you know, we suddenly learn of, you know, this switch, this book was going over there, or these rights were going over there. Because, you know, Arnie and Thich Nhat Hahn didn't have much in writing. It was all, you know, what Arnie thought were, you know, understandings by word or by look even. But things were eroding, relations, you know, understandings that were eroding. And there were some pretty unhappy unfoldings there in the last couple of years, you know, leading up to, you know, what I experienced as a rather coercive.
What was coercive?
With
what happened?
Coercive. There. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh, with lawyers, wanted to change the whole structure, and
of what? Of Parallax Press?
Of Community of Mindful Living, of Community of Mindful Living, which included Parallax Press, and there was no real discussion. And so, you know, for me, I remember when I had to sign the papers, I remember it occurring to me to write my name as Therese rather than Therese. So that tells you. And I think that's, you know, as much as I want to say about it right now.
All right. Yep. So, all right. Yeah, so there's Thich Nhat Hanh taking Parallax away from you all, which is what happened, as I understand it. That, you know, he called Arnie in and just said, you know, sign. It was sort of like The Godfather, you know. Either your signature or your brains will be on this piece of paper.
Yeah, and right. And I see then, I saw Arnie then, I mean, you know, agonized with all this, and then for days he just sweated in this room at a certain hamlet at Plum Village, and I was in there with him as much as I could stand. At some point, you know, dear Wendy Johnson, who was a board member of Community of Mindful Living with us, and you know, has been a dear friend and colleague. I mean, I was so lucky and happy to teach with her for years in Arkansas and New Mexico, various places. I've loved giving Dharma retreats with her. Anyway, she was there with me, and at one point I said, "Oh, Wendy, let's go into the countryside," and we did. So it was so grim. It was so grim.
Yeah, I had a little involvement with it because this is 1999. You're talking about, right?
Right.
I was doing book signings, and so I did one up in Where was that center? Some guy started for Thich Nhat Hahn up in New Hampshire.
Vermont.
Hang on one second. One second.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yoman's here. All right, we'll try to wrap this up in a little while. Our driver has arrived, but anyway, they're very good at waiting here. But all right.
You were in Woodstock, near Woodstock, Vermont.
I was in Brattleboro. And so I did a book signing, and I talked to some people there, and I mentioned something about a problem Arnie was having with Thich Nhat Hahn, and they immediately told the guy that was the head, I can't remember what, of the thing there, the I guess Woodstock, and then he told that there's a Vietnamese woman was sort of like Thich Nhat Hanh's business manager or something.
Yeah, Sister Chung Kum.
Yeah, so he called up and told her, and then she went and told Thich Nhat Hanh. I remember, because I heard about it, she said, man who writes a Suzuki book says Arnie says blah, blah, blah. So I got Arnie in a little trouble there. Maybe it's all my fault.
Yeah, right. It's, well, I mean, that, obviously, if somebody's going to talk like, see, that's the thing, I mean, and it's happening all around us. I mean, people stop communicating and start. I mean, this is why I'm so careful. It's because, I make life and pieces and the causes and conditions that gave rise to this or that, and so going forward, I can tell you it was really hard. I was called the devil. I had incredibly good company. I won't mention who was lumped together in that. But I knew if they're going to lump me with that person,
come on,
who was also included as the devil. No. I'll let that person reveal that. But and so if I'm called the devil, and in fact, I was also, there were obstacles put in my pathing. And it's very hard when, the authorities do that. Very hard for people to stand their ground.
Yeah.
So, I suffered a lot of misunderstanding and lack of compassion from people. And yet, I'm glad to say, I have persisted. I have continued. I integrate both, what I learned at Zen Center and what I learned with Thich Nhat Hanh. I integrate both in the retreats I give, the Dharma mentoring I do, the hospice chaplaincy. So I'm grateful for all that, and I'm of course especially grateful to friends who have really managed, I would say, because it's not easy for a human being to manage a kind of true equanimity of being with, people who just like we're talking about with, the parting of ways, with between Baker Roshi and the Sangha. It's hard for people to meet again or to reunite or to work together again, in the ways we have done for, you know, the betterment of mankind. So, you know, of course, I'm very grateful, and I'm super grateful that Arnie and I have gone through so much together as a married couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, you know,
Yeah.
that's kind of astounding. Yep.
Yeah, you've sailed various storms in the seas of life. Hey, I'm going to have to call you back. I'm going to keep talking to you. But
All right.
I got to go.
Great having this time with you, David. Great. Enjoy whatever you're doing next with dear Katrinka.
Yeah, well, we got to do a little shopping, and you know, it's noon. Anyway, I'm going to call you back. So I could call you when I get back from there, or I could call you another day.
I think another day would be good, David. Let's do that. Okay. So I'll give you a couple of times. I'll email you. Okay.
Yeah.
Good, David. Thank you. Really wonderful being with you.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. It's good. I'm enjoying it. And say hi to Arnie, would you?
I will.
Yeah. I was just remembering that I every now and then in Japan, I'd send him like a postcard or a letter, and I'd try to make it look like I'd gone completely crazy, and it would just be like, and I was thinking I should write him something like that from here. It just maybe, but now
I enjoyed.
Don't tell him I said that. Don't tell him I said that.
I enjoyed the podcast you did with him. Your laughter was so absolutely contagious. And you know, some of the people I've been practicing with, I let them know about that podcast, and they too just so enjoyed it. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, I'll say
all right.
aloha.
Yeah. Well, sampai jumpa lagi. I mean,
Aloha.
see you later.
See you later. Hui ho.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
So thanks a lot, Therese. Therese Fitzgerald. Really enjoyed talking with you. And we will enjoy talking with you again next week. Incidentally, you know, it sounded like she was going to give me a couple of days to talk with her that were near. That was 4 months ago. And then we just, so right now it's October 4th, my son Kelly's birthday, and Kaz Tanahashi's birthday. Kelly's 50, Kaz is 90. But so it was 4 months before, I think as I recall that recording was made. But finally the date she came up with was, this date. It was actually October 3rd where she lives in Hawaii. So, you'll get, part 2 next week. So thanks a lot, Therese. And until next week, this is DC, Pumbaa of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sonora with Dogget Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.